SYU formed to help bring together young Saiva Hindus across the UK to help us connect and tap into our heritage in a way we haven't before. The foundation course in Saivism is a 10-part series, and sessions have been scheduled twice a month. These will be delivered via Zoom in a similar format to today's taster session. The objective of today's session is 1, to get a bit more information about the course content, 2, to experience a sample session in terms of the format, how it's run, 3, to meet and interact with our main guest speaker who will be leading the course, and I'll shortly introduce them. And finally, many of you will be aware that it's Vijayadasami, Vidyarambham today, a celebration marking the beginning of formal education. The day also serves as a reminder of the value of lifelong learning, and many individuals will be revisiting their studies or initiating themselves into new areas of knowledge. Next, I'm very happy to be introducing our main speaker, Professor Dr. Madhusudhanan Kalaichelvan. He is a highly knowledgeable and experienced teacher, lecturer, and a sought-after speaker in the field of religion, samayam, cultural studies, Saivam, Saiva Siddhantam, temple architecture, to name a few. Some of you on the call will know him quite well, as Madhuvanna was one of our keynote speakers at the 23rd annual conference by the Federation of Saiva Hindu Temples UK. In addition, he kindly accepted our invite to work with us at SYU to run 2 largely successful youth sessions during his time here in the UK in June. These sessions were very well received, and the conversations we had with the attendees afterwards simply highlighted how the foundation course in Saivism is something that is very much needed in the UK and is long overdue. And we can't think of anyone better than Madhuvanna to lead these sessions in a captivating, engaging, accessible, and time and age appropriate way. So a little bit on housekeeping before we get started. If you wish to ask questions during the session, please use the chat function, which will be monitored by the team. And we hope all of you can join us for the course itself as well. Places are limited, and we'll reshare details about enrollment at the very end. You will need to pay for the whole course and complete a Google form to fully enroll and confirm your place. Now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Madhuvanna.
Paranama Parvati Pataye Hara Hara Mahadeva Tennaduடைய சிவனே போற்றி எந்நாட்டவர்க்கும் இறைவா போற்றி ஆரூர் அமர்ந்த அரசே போற்றி சீரார் திருவையாரா போற்றி போற்றி விண்ணாளும் தேவர்க்கும் மேலாகிய வேதியனை மண்ணாளும் மன்னவர்க்கும் மாண்பாகி நின்றானை தன்னார் தமிழ் அளிக்கும் தன்பாண்டி நாட்டானை பெண்ணாளும் பாகனை பேணு பெருந்துறையில் கண்ணார் கடல் காட்டி நாயேனை ஆட்கொண்ட அண்ணாமலையானை பாடுதுங்கா நம்மானாய் சித்தம் தெளிவீர்கள் அத்தன் ஆரூரை பத்தி மலர்த்தூவ முத்தியாகுமே. Vanakkam and a very good evening to you all. Very happy to be a part of this first session, starting on a very auspicious Vijayadasami day, a day earmarked exclusively for starting a new learning process and to learn about a religion, a faith system to which we have an adherence is the best that we can do to reap the best benefits out of the school of thought or the philosophy that we have chosen for ourselves. I am in debt to the Saiva Youth UK, a very nascent organization, but with brilliant core team, which has been working at a beautiful pace to begin with the 2-day youth sessions exclusively organized during the conference and a couple of lectures, and trying their best to support Shaiva Siddhanta philosophy through the British-born Tamil-speaking population. And I'm very happy to be working with them on this 10-part online session series, trying to share some basic knowledge that I have managed to gather with respect to an introduction to Shaiva Siddhantam. The course is scheduled as a 10-part series, and I would like to introduce the course today with the topics that we would be discussing through the 10-part series. A foundation course in Shaivism, that's the title for the course. I have split the 10-part series into 6 broad main titles, which I'll walk you through, and also discuss what are the aspects, titles that we'll be discussing under these broad titles. Basic learning. To understand a religion, we'll have to understand what, in general, a religion is. And then we can get into a specific religious school that we're going to be studying at a more deeper level. So, definition of religion, why and how do we study a religion, the need and necessity. And we'll be broadly switching over to Indian religions, predominantly what are at an academic level classified as the Vedic and the non-Vedic school of thoughts. There are several religions which has a belief system, which has its core principles, which has a defined God, but which does not adhere to the Vedic school. There are religious systems that criticizes and questions the very authority of Vedas. So, South Asian school of religious thoughts generally classify it under the Vedic and the non-Vedic school. So we'll be understanding that also. Most importantly, any religious study that you start, we need to define what a pramanam is. Or in Tamil, the Shaiva Siddhanta parlance, we call it as alavai. What is the authority or what is the identified, approved authority when it comes to talking about religion? What are the philosophies? How do you test and understand the axioms put forward as philosophical? And what are the books that are generally accepted by and large as a proof, as a testimonial to the validity of the philosophy? So we will have to define what a pramanam is and try to make a consolidated list of books or authorized works that we will be accepting at a Shaiva Siddhanti's level. Comparison between religions. We will not be delving deep into various different philosophies. As you know, this is a foundation course. But to study a religion will mean that you also get a working knowledge of other equally popular religions, just in case to compare, because there are a lot of common aspects between world religions. Every religion will have a defined god or gods. You will have a set of principles that which will be the core values around which the religious faith has evolved. There will generally, most probably, be a founding father, and then you will have a set of scriptures. So when each and every religion has all these parameters, what makes Shaiva Siddhantam more popular and accepted by a good population of believers? Even within Hinduism, we have several different schools of thoughts. Why is Shaivam always at the top? Why is any list of faith systems under Hinduism always starts with Shaivism? So we need to understand by comparing, and these comparisons will be at an academic level. So we'll be doing a brief comparative analysis also. The second broad topic is Shaivam. We're just getting into Shaivam here. What exactly is Shaivam? How is it to be understood as? Or take it like this, a part-A question trying to define Shaivism. And what are the scriptures that help us understand the definition for the very word Shaivam? Then, when does something become Shaivam? Here in India, especially in Tamil Nadu, Shaivam is most popularly understood by one and all as a dietary preference. Vegetarianism is generally addressed as Shaivam. And anything outside vegetarian diet is asaivam, as it is called. It is not Shaivam. Yeah, so that's is it just why is a dietary preference named after a popular religious system that we follow? Has it got any connect that way? So to understand Shaivism, when does somebody or something becomes Shaivam? So that will be the second title that we'll be discussing. And then we will have a brief understanding of historic evolution of Shaivam. And a historic evolution of a religion, especially in the Asian context or Indian context, might not have an exact date of coming into being, coming into existence. Yeah, I mean, we can only go so much to identify the oldest object or any kind of archaeological evidences that which prescribes to this particular school of thought. So we will compile and get to know all that is Shaivam in the historic past, predominantly in and around Asian countries, and put it in a chronology, a timeline to understand how over years worship of Shiva has been brought into existence, what had remained unchanged, what has been lost, how things have changed, camouflage, all of that will be understood under the historic evolution. And when I say Shaivam, or when somebody calls himself or herself a Shaivite, the next popular or probable question should be, which school of Shaivism you belong to? We today, in today's context, we generally call Shaiva Siddhantam as Shaivam because it's a very popular organized school of philosophy. It has the monasteries that adhere to the principles of Siddhanta, that which propagates it. Many of the temples dedicated to Shiva around the world are all agamic schools to which the Shaiva Siddhanta school has its affiliation. But is that the only school of Shaivam? You have the Pasupatas, you have the Kashmira Shaivas. Here in India and in many other parts of the world, we have Veera Shaivites. We have the Trika school of Shaivam, again the Kashmiri school. We have the Bhairavas. We have the Vamacharis. Likewise, we have several branches within the Shaiva school. So an understanding of the Shaiva schools that are there, even the Kapalikas, the Kalamuhas, the Mahavratis, all these accept Shiva's prominence and Shiva to be the ultimate form of godliness. But how do they differ? Can we bring them all under one umbrella? Yes, to accept Shiva's prominence over the other gods and to look up to him as the Moksha Dhatu, or the one who gives you salvation. At that level, they are all the same. But how are they different? There are certain differences also. So we'll be understanding about various different schools of Shaivism. And then at the third module level, we'll zero it down into Shaiva Siddhanta, its philosophy basically, and historically how it had evolved amidst many other schools and how it had reached a level of preference. Then we will understand about the texts which we follow to be a Shaiva Siddhantin, and the texts that are guidelines, guidebooks to understand Shaiva Siddhanta. Predominantly, we'll have an introduction to the Agamas. How many, how are they different? What are the common factors? What are the sections under an Agama? Today's context, we all know about the Agamas as a code book to build and run temples. That's probably how it is popularly understood. But are Agamas just reduced to a book on the code of conduct for a temple? Not really. The Agamas are much more to it. In fact, it is probably the most elaborate user manual for Shaiva Siddhantam as a religious school of thought. Everything from the early stages to the finale is all documented under the Agamas. And so we need to have a very good working knowledge of the Agamas to understand what Shaiva Siddhantam is. Then we will have an introduction to the Tirumurais, the 12 canonical works by the Nayanmars, the Thevaram, Tiruvashakam, Tirumantram, Tiruvishaipa, Tirupallandu, Periya Puranam, and the 12 volumes of Shaiva texts, all in Tamil, and the 14 Shastra texts under the lineage of Acharyas in the school of Meikanda Devanayana. So we will have an introduction to the Agamas, Tirumurais, and the Siddhanta Shastras, and the founders and people who have propagated it. And at this level, we'll also understand about a few popular schools under the Shaiva Siddhanta tradition too. After understanding the Agamas and the Gurus, we need to understand about our temples, the Shaivalayas. The temples are a seat of knowledge also. Apart from being religious destinations, those are the places where you get to see the philosophy getting a concrete imagery. The rituals. Why are a few temples addressed to as the Padal Petra Sthalams? How are they different from the others? What are the classification? How do we understand the significance of a few temples? Why do we give importance to temples like Tiruvarur and Chidambaram? So this will be an introduction to Shaiva temples and the Padal Petra Sthalams, how a generic temple prototype will be for a Shaiva Agamic temple, the Prakaras and the Vimanas, a little into the architecture also, the rituals, festivals, and most importantly, the etiquette to be followed when you visit a temple. As a part of the temple worship module, we'll also be discussing about the various forms of Shiva. We all are familiar with forms like Somaskanda, Nataraja, Bhikshatana maybe, but there are 25 such beautiful forms, each one different and the unique aspects, what defines each of the form, a comprehensive understanding of the 25 different forms of Shiva, at least the names and a few important ones for you to identify them when you visit a temple next. So the forms of Shiva. And second in list of to be worshipped in Shaiva Siddhanta are the devotees. After Shiva himself, we worship and revere his devotees. We will understand from the life history of a few Nayanmars the importance of worshipping devotees. How are they positioned? What are the qualities and attributes of a devotee? And how does one respect them, treat them? The third in the list to be worshipped are undoubtedly the Acharyas, the Guru. How does Shaiva Agama define a Guru, his or her duties? How do we relate ourselves to a Guru, the lineage of Acharyas? What do they teach us? How do we connect with them? How do we look at them? So all of these under the temple and worship module. The fifth and the sixth modules will be mostly a practical application sort of. So the general issues that Shaiva Siddhantam faces today. To begin with, the linguistic differences. We will have to understand, like in many other schools or religious thought systems, thought process that have evolved in and around Asian countries, especially in India, uses Sanskrit and Tamil language at various proportions. But in Shaiva Siddhanta, and also as an extension, the Vaishnavite philosophy, which is popular in South India, both these languages are treated at par. While we have the primary text, the Shaiva Agamas authored in Sanskrit, the Tirumurais and the Vaikunta Shastrams are all in Tamil. All these three works are to be treated and respected at par. Will or should language be understood as a barrier? How exactly do we look at language as a Shaiva Siddhanti? Do I identify myself as a Tamil, a Shaivite, or a Tamil-speaking Shaivite? So, which takes precedence? How do our Acharyas guided us through these? What is the language of Shiva? That's a popular topic of discussion too. Is Shiva restricted by languages? Has he got linguistic preferences? Why has there, especially in the last 1.5 centuries, been so much commotion, especially in the Shaiva Siddhanta school with respect to language and religion? Similarly, another popular point of discussion across global religions, in fact, is gender. How does Shaiva Siddhantam handle it? Where and how do we draw the line? What is the difference? Who gets what? We talk so much about the Ardhanarishvara form, where Shiva himself is half-part female. So is that just a namesake? Is it just for a description and for praising Shiva? Or is it how it is actually in practice? Yeah, because this is a very, very unique religion where the presiding deity himself accepts his equal and imposing 50% of his divine body, divine manifestation with Shakti. Thirdly, regional issues. I should say very proudly that it is Shaiva Siddhantam that has many centuries back managed to dissolve geographical barriers to affiliate oneself with it. Sundaramurti Swamigal, way back in the 8th century, identifies and declares a group of devotees to be from far away from the Asian continent, from India and Sri Lanka put together. Anybody beyond these countries are all to be identified as an exclusive group of devotees. Appalum Adi Sarandar. A very close translation would be people who are actually quite far away from the core land where Shaiva school is active. So how do we understand that? Will regional boundaries, geographical barriers be a barricade to somebody to practice Shaiva Siddhantam? What if I were not born in a traditional Shaiva Siddhanta family? Can somebody with his birthplace being Russia or Mexico still adhere himself to Shaiva Siddhanta and call himself and practice Shaiva Siddhanta tradition? So all those issues will be discussed. And the last two issues are pretty much important in today's context to understand the difference between Shaivism and Vaishnavam. We know that these are popular schools within Hinduism. How exactly do I understand myself as a Shaivite, and where and when do I become a Hindu? Should I look upon myself as a Hindu Shaivite or a Hindu or a Shaivite? So these differences has got to be understood for a safe propagation of the religion, both at a religious level and at a social level. So how are we same and where are we different? Similarly, Shaivam and the school of Shankaracharya, or the Ekanmavadis as we call them, Shaivam versus Advaitam, how do we understand it? Just because Adi Shankaracharya had praised Shiva in so many verses, should we understand him as a Shaivite? Or where does the difference happens? In that case, why have the Shaiva Acharyas had so much to condemn about Adi Shankara? And for that matter, why has Adi Shankara condemned the Agamic school? Now, these are to be understood at an academic level to best understand the religion with all its nitty-gritties, to practice in a very, very safe, clear mode. So these are some of the issues that we will be discussing. And finally, the practical aspects. Living a Shaiva life. What attributes you emulate to call yourself a practicing Shaivite? Shaiva Siddhantam and its practicality in general. How stringent is the religion? Where does it give way for modern changes? How or who decides the changes? Who accepts them? A day in a Shaivite's life. Typically, the Agamas have defined and clearly demarcated a day for us, has made it into sections to tell us, guide us from what time to what time, what do you do? And to be very frank, it has gone to so much details about even the time that you wake up. Yeah, the first thing to do as soon as you wake up, the rituals that you follow when you do your regular ablutions, the Shiva Puja, what's the best time to visit a temple? Yeah, the food habits especially. How do you consume food? What are the kind of offerings you make? How do you extend your concern to the environment, to people around you? Yeah, to animals and birds. How do you extend your love and compassion towards them? So a very, very practical approach to life with Shaiva Siddhanta principles has been interpreted through the Agamas. So we'll understand a typical day's life as prescribed. And to finally, we will probably close the session with what next kind of a question. Now, having understood the basics, how do I take it forward? So these are going to be the 6 broad modules, 6 broad titles under which these subjects will be discussed. So these 6 modules will be spread across the 10-part lecture series that we have. Being Vidyarambam Day, Vijayadasami Day, I'll take another 5 to 10 minutes maximum to introduce the first module, the first chapter of the first module, and get done with it. So a basic introduction. What exactly is a religion? Let's go by an academic definition. The belief in a god or in a group of gods. To begin with, every religion should have a god or a group of gods identified to be a part of the school, the thought process. And the thought process, its philosophy, would have evolved around the name, form, and attributes of that particular god whom they have defined. It's an organized system of belief. So there's a philosophy existing. Ceremonies. There cannot be a religion without defined ceremonies, be it day-to-day ceremonies, rituals, special festivals, call it whatever. So the kind of events and ceremonies to be practiced, that's where your belief gets into a practical form. A belief otherwise is just a code book. It just talks, it discusses, it puts forward its view about how exactly do you give it a practical form? Only by practicing it through ceremonies and rituals. So a religion should have a clear set of ceremonies and rituals to be followed. And then the rules to worship the god or the group of gods. Who can, what can you do, when should you do? So all of these questions are also answered. So a religion should have these 3 things. It should be a time-tested philosophy, that which is put to practice too. The world so far would have certainly seen thousands of various different religious schools, if not more. Some have managed to stay back, some have vanished, some are just kept up as exhibits in museums. Some are still, searched upon for, a part of which has changed from one form to another. Certain principles of an old religion has been accepted, brought in, and then the core principles have been retained, and then the secondary and the tertiary principles have probably been changed. So it is quite dramatic to understand the history of religions for that matter. So a religion should have its philosophy time-tested, and it should be put to practice too. And it should have the capacity to evolve over times, accept changes, get itself modified, disappeared, and sometimes even reappeared. So all of these define a typical religion for that matter. So with these parameters in hand, we will be evaluating the Shaiva Siddhanta school also. To understand religious history, definitely these are stories from ancient civilization. Across the globe, we have at least 4 to 5 very ancient, what are called as civilizations, mostly the River Valley civilizations, Each of it had its own religious adherents. Man had always had two primary reasons to worship. One, those that which has helped him to lead a life in this world. Anything from basic necessity like water and food to luxury. So anything that has made his life easy here, that which has helped him live a happy life, is to be worshipped. Secondly, anything that causes a sense of tremor, wild beasts, to natural calamities, a thunderbolt, sudden shower, yeah, all of these diseases, pandemic. So all of them have also been assigned a god to be taken care of, and God's form is being worshipped. This is something common that you see across civilizations. There can, as a matter of fact, not be a civilization which had no concept of God. Anthropologists have this as a primary parameter to define a civilization. There has so far not been a single civilization across the globe that which is seen to have no adherence to God at all. In one form or the other, the concept of God has been accepted and his supremacy has been accepted and submitted to. So that's something very interesting that you see. Human race had always been worshipping a God. Common questions on God and what happens after death. These are again two popular questions that is attempted by all schools of all religious systems, be it the Egyptian, ancient Egyptian system, or the classical Rome and the Greek schools. So across the globe again, these are two prominent questions, two basic questions based on which your entire religious philosophy will be balanced. The definition for the God, or how exactly have you understood a particular God to be the presiding deity who has caused the universe, the creation, the sustenance, and the destruction. And so how exactly is he or she to be understood? Yeah, that'll be the major part of philosophy. Secondly, what happens to life after death? I think it's from here even the theory of karma appears. Yeah, the entire Indian philosophy is resting itself on the theory of karma. But the Vaishnavites handle it in a different way. The Shaivites handle it in a different way. The Advaitins handle it in a different way. So do the Jains. So many schools of Indian origin understands karma because they have attempted to answer this question about life after death. So these are two popular questions which gives way to millions of questions to be understood and answered through the philosophical understanding. In Indian religion, the Vedas, unopposed, they play the primary role in defining any Indian religion. An Indian religion or most of the Asian religion should have an adherence or oppose it. You don't have a choice to just skip it. You either need to affiliate yourself or oppose it. Either ways. The holiness of the Vedas has again been unchallenged by all the schools that adheres to it. But what makes it interesting is several contradicting religions, all of it affiliates itself to the Vedic school. For example, you have the Shaiva Siddhanta and Advaita school of philosophy, that which is popularized by Adi Shankaracharya. Both of them have several aspects in common, but have tangential views on primary subjects of discussion. But both of them have their adherence to Vedas. The most interesting aspect of the Vedas that makes it unique is it can be interpreted in more than one way. And let me tell you, these interpretations, though contradicting, are all very, very convincing. That way, the supremacy of the Vedas are to be understood and its holiness and how the interpretation changes. As an extension of the Vedas, we have the Upanishads, that which is brilliant arguments put forward to answer philosophical questions. And there again, the Upanishads are understood as the core set of philosophy, which again has its own interpretation in a different way. Then you have the Vedas are to be understood as an oral tradition, a celebrated and revered oral tradition by many religious scholars, many scholars of various religions, in fact, and that's why they're called as Shruti, that which is heard. Shruti, as a Sanskrit word, comes from Shravanam as a verb, which is basically to listen. When you listen to something, you're performing a Shravanam. And from Shravanam, what that which is learned by Shravanam becomes Shruti, and the Vedas are to be heard, learned, and memorized and recited, and hence they're called as Shruti. The ultimate authority, its timelessness, and its authorship, whether it is anonymous or not. So there are a few schools that identifies Vedas to be anonymous in nature, but the first difference that is to be understood as the Shaiva Siddhantan is, here our Acharyas have very clearly said that the Vedas were recited first and foremost by none but Sadashiva himself, the ultimate form of Shiva, who granted it to the rishis. It was through him. He himself chanted each and every verse, and he is the first in the parampara of Vedic rishis, for that matter. He propagated the Vedas. There are a number of examples where the Tevaram and Trivachakam authors have clearly sung about Shiva being fond of both reciting the Vedas and listening to them being chanted. There are two rishis always who have offered to keep chanting the Vedas near his earlobes, and he always enjoys Vedic recitation. And so we have the first, in fact, this is to me the most valuable takeaway from today's session is to understand that the Shaiva Siddhantin does not take Vedas to be anonymous. It has been chanted by Shiva, recited by Shiva, and gifted as an oral tradition to the rishis. So the Vedas undoubtedly praise him in every word. Then, if I say that there is this contradicting view, that the Vedas have exclusive sections that praises Mahavishnu, that praises Indra so extensively, praises Agni, the fire god, in many places praises Varuna for being the source of water, the basic element for life forms. Yeah, so how does all that gets accounted for? A Shaiva Siddhantin looks at it at a way that it can only be Shiva whose quintessence, a minuscule part of his power, a minuscule part of his Parashakti gets manifested into various different forms. As Indra to perform a set of duties, as Agni to be the sole source of energy, fire, and as water through Varuna. And it is through his grace and blessings that these manifestations help support life system. We need all of these and more to put together a universe in place. So all of that is taken care of by Shiva, and he deputes these organizers to help him run the show. So if there is a Vedic part that praises Indra for all that he is, it ultimately goes to praise Shiva, who has, after all, put him in charge of those set of duties. That's how Vedic verses that celebrates other gods and goddesses are to be understood by a Shaiva Siddhantin. The Vedas are, of course, very popularly understood as 4 in number, the Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharvana Vedas. And very clearly, in many occasions, the Tevaram authors have said Shiva took the form of Dakshina Murti, the master who sits facing south, Dakshina Murti, the form that faces south, and seated under a banyan tree. He chanted all the 4 Vedas, exposed them to a set of rishis, and the Rishi Parampara from there took it forward. And then the Vedas are split into 4 parts, the Samhitas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads. Of course, we'll understand what each of them are probably in the next class. And the concept of God, how does Veda defines God? Who are the gods generally mentioned by through popular names in the Vedas? How does the Veda attempt explaining the concept of creation, Atma, and Karma as it gets calculated? So the Vedic scriptures first define all of these, help us understand the concept of Srishti or creation, the soul, Atma, and its immortality, the concept of Karma and Jnana, the rituals to be performed, and more. Of course, we have Vedavyasa, who helped compile the Vedas into 4 and bring them under these titles. Similarly, managed to propagate the 18 Puranas, compiled them into the list of 18 Mahapuranas, and propagated them also amongst the rishis. So, with the role of Vedavyasa, we'll also understand the Vedic school to an extent. So, I think with that, I conclude the session. This is how we are going to be attempting each of the topic. We will, of course, be delving deep into the Vedic school and more, probably take it forward to understand the role of Vedavyasa at a more deeper level, and the split part, and Shaiva or Shiva through the Vedas. That's a very not so popular topic under discussion. Many people move away from it assuming that you need to have a working knowledge of the Vedas to understand how Shiva is propagated or praised in the Vedas. That's not necessary. So we will have to understand the Vedas as the primary tool to praise Sadashiva Tattva. There are many commentaries authored by Mahajnanis who were Vedic Pandits and practicing Shaivites in the ancient past who have helped us interpret the Vedas through a Shaiva Siddhanta perspective. In fact, as an extension, I'll try and introduce a beautiful book from the last century that interprets the quintessence of Tevaram with the Vedas. How several points discussed in the Tevaram gets its inspiration or influence from the Vedic scriptures. How to draw parallels between the Tirumurais and the Vedas. Because one of the common problems that Shaiva Siddhanta faces today is a branch of Shaivites who feel that the Vedas are not necessary for a Shaiva Siddhanta. That's not the case. The Vedas have been time and again been chanted for its importance by many Nayanmars, and we have none but Trijnana Sambandar emphasizing on the importance of the Vedas and its glory. So we will have to understand how Tirumurais have their Vedic roots. This is also for a fact that there are views that opposes the greatness of Tirumurai and says that it is because of the language of origin not to be treated at par with Vedas. And now both of these are quite a trap for a Shaiva Siddhantin, assuming the Vedas to be of lower cadre or the Tirumurais to be understood one step low because they are in Tamil. Both of these views are anti-Shaiva Siddhanti, anti-Shaiva Siddhantam in fact. So to understand how the Tirumurais and the Vedas have so many aspects in common will help us get a very clear idea about what is the stand of a Shaiva Siddhantin when it comes to the Vedas. So each of the section will have a general introduction to the core topic and why do we understand it or why do we even have it in the syllabus when we are here to study Shaiva Siddhanta. That way a holistic understanding has been attempted. So this is a sample for how the classes henceforth are going to be. With that, I conclude the sample session. மூர்த்தி எல்லாம் வாழி எங்கள் மோன குருவாழி அருள் வார்த்தை என்றும் வாழி அன்பர் வாழி பராபரமே எல்லாம் ஸ்ரீ தியாகராஜ கிருபை ஸ்ரீ தியாகராஜ மகாராஜோ விஜயதே ஆரூரா தியாகேஷா நன்றி வணக்கம்.
Thank you, Madhusudhanan, for the outline of the course. I think the scheme of work looks very interesting, and we look forward to the sessions where we can get into more detail about each of the components. I'll give everyone who's on the call a couple of minutes to type in any questions you have. For today, I think we'll try and go through questions which are about the course and slightly general. And Madhusudhanan, you can look through the chat to answer any other questions as well. I'm going to hand over to Sambhavi to mention a couple of other things.
Yes, so thank you once again, Madhusudhanan, for that wonderful introduction. I think we're all really excited for you to delve deeper into each of these topics in the following sessions. And thank you all for joining. I hope this has given you a good insight into what will be covered in the course and how the course will be run. So I hope you all will sign up for the course itself. The instructions are on this slide that you can see. So you will need to pay the total amount to the bank details provided on the slide and then complete the Google form. And if you have any other questions or concerns, you can email us at saivayouthuk@gmail.com. So once again, thank you. And yeah, we'll address any general questions in the chat and we'll stick around for a few minutes for you to ask.